I think for the first time in a couple of weeks, we have both gentlemen together here, which is very good, and we will get underway with the continuation of our conversation about ADHD, ADD, AM and FM, Cinemax, HBO, and Showtime, and all those good things. Rob and Paul, good to have you here this morning.
It's great to be here. Last week we were talking about ADHD, and Steve chimed in and gave us a lot of very good information. And let's just start by talking once again about what the brain is like with ADHD. And it's as Edward Hallowell says, who is one of the expert psychiatrists in this field, says basically that it's a brain that has a Ferrari motor and bicycle brakes. In other words, things work very fast within the brain, but it's very, very complicated to slow down. And so what you've got to do is you've got to get people to slow down a little bit so that they can function better and work better in society. And that's what the difficulty is with most people with ADHD. Most of the time, they're extraordinarily bright. They have great capabilities, but their brain is running so quickly that they've got to be able to catch up to the brain. The rest of you has to catch up to the brain.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's an interesting affliction in the sense that, you know, people and children who have this can be, and adults and children who have this can be incredibly focused, like laser beam intensity focused on things that fascinate them, you know, things that interest them. They can spend hours and hours, you know, learning about, listening to, watching, and, you know, reading about things that they absolutely love and are fascinated with. And then if something's not too interesting, I mean, that's where the struggles take place.
That's right.
And, you know, oftentimes, I mean, some of the toughest circumstances for, you know, kids and adults with ADD is like, for example, like sitting through a lecture where someone might be incredibly monotone and boring in the lecture. And, you know, it's like one of the worst experiences for someone who has, you know, ADD. So their minds are off, you know, on other places, just thinking about other things or focusing on something else. And, you know, they miss a lot. And unfortunately, you know, it takes, for someone who has ADD, it takes 100% of their concentration to focus, whereas someone who doesn't have that affliction, it might take only 50% of their concentration to focus on something. And, you know, that's unfortunate because, you know, not everything you deal with is terribly interesting, and yet it requires an ability to be able to pay attention and focus.
And so the big question really comes in is how do we get the frontal cortex of the brain to be able to be a little bit better organized when it comes to these kinds of things that may not be that interesting. How do we get the person, and we call that the executive function, how do we get that executive function to work properly so that you can control what's going on, you can get the homework done that's not so much fun, and do all the other things?
Why don't you follow that up right after the break? It is 740, News Radio 560, WHYN. Good morning.
This Legal Minute is brought to you by...
Hi, Rick Edelman here. Got